I want to take you back to when you were a kid, growing up. Describe everything you recall from the laugh you got when running for student council.
My speech was on humor, comedy, really, was the subject for my speech. And it was kind of a big deal in the 6th grade at my school, the public speaking competition. It was about structurally talking about how comedy works and, slapstick comedy and, this, and but I ended up winning for the class and then the grade, and then I went and competed in front of the school and in front of the whole auditorium. And I did my speech, and then the judge asked me a question. I could tell she was trying to, like, it was one of the teachers, right? I could tell she was trying to stump me, she didn't like me. I remember her asking, I have like photographic memory of her asking me, and she asked me, "You said in your speech that sometimes you can use comedy to get out of a difficult situation. Give me an example of a time you have used comedy or humor to get out of a difficult situation," right? But I remember something popped into my head, and I had an answer, and I said, here's an example of when I can use comedy to get out of a situation. I remember when I got my report card last year. I brought it home, and I said to my dad, "Dad, here's my report card, but I got to tell you, my marks are underwater." And my dad said, "What do you mean?" I said, "They're below sea level." Okay? So like this was some joke that I'd read in a joke book, right? But I think there was like a nervousness from the entire school of 4th and 5th graders and 6th graders, worried for me, that I wasn't going to come up with a good answer. So they just it got the biggest laugh because I just came up with something, on the fly. And it was such a relief, and such a huge laugh from the crowd. And I went out in the schoolyard at lunch, and everybody was coming up to me saying, how'd you come up with that so fast? And that was the moment where I realized I wanted to be a comedian. It was in the 6th grade.
And the rest is
history. I got that
history.
laugh, just been chasing that laugh for the rest of my life.
So you're 25 years old, and decide to move back in with your parents.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Parents didn't seem to like that too much. I was talking to your mom, Mary Jane, about that the other day. Explain what they would do when you would take showers.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah, see, because my parents said I could move back in because I was working on the show. I'd started the show at that point. So I was working on public access TV, but it was voluntary, right? The Tom Green Show I didn't get paid to do it for the first several years. And I'd studied broadcasting in school, and they knew I was sort of applying myself to something that was sort of, had some potential of turning into something. So they said, okay, yeah, I can move back in. So I didn't have to pay rent, didn't have to get a job. Essentially, I was able to just focus on making this show all day,
This is the Tom Green Show. It's not the Green Tom Show. This is my favorite show because it is my show.
I think my parents were like, even though I was living there doing the show, my dad wanted me to get a job and go get a real job. And then he'd, get up in the morning and I'd be in the shower. And he's like, "Why is he sitting in the shower? He should be out getting a job, So they'd turn the hot water off in the house, and then the water would get cold. And so they were kind of pranking me too, Now that you mention it, I recreated that moment in my movie Freddy Got Fingered, when I'm in the shower in scuba equipment and the door's locked, and Rip Torn plays my father, and he's knocking on the door. "What are you doing in there? Get in that shower all day. You got to get out and get a job." And then he turns the hot water off. Yeah.
Oh, and your dad was a tank commander back in the day in the Canadian military.
Yeah.
How do you think that impacted him?
Well, it was definitely like his father was in the military. He was in the military. It's a very structured, authority sort of, driven kind of occupation. My dad was known to be a bit of a prankster himself, I believe, back in the day, and he was sort of, but he did understand that sort of, the idea of getting up at the crack of dawn and going for a jog and then going to work was, it wasn't sort of an artist's lifestyle, where you could sort of make a video and be up at night making music in a nightclub and then sleep in till 11 o'clock and, kind of roll out of bed. No, it's like, get up, 6 a.m., what are you doing? You're not sleeping here all hours of the afternoon. You got to get out and get a job. I mean, that was literally the mantra, so.
And even over the summer, he was waking you up at
he would
at
wake
6.
me up in the morning, and I started finding places I could sleep in the house that were, like that he didn't know about. So I'd set my alarm for like 6:30 a.m. Then I'd get up just before him, and then I'd go move in my sleeping bag over behind the furnace or something like that, and I'd sleep there till he went to work. And he'd come down looking for me. I wasn't there. That worked for a couple of months, And then I'd go back to bed and sleep till noon, and then go out and work on the show all afternoon. And
Well, speaking of him being a prankster, do you remember the hot pepper prank when you were like 4 years old?
I don't actually remember that. No, but I think I've heard him talk about that. What was that again?
That
Sounds pretty traumatic. What, he was putting hot pepper in my food or something?
Something. I mean, we'll have to ask him.
The one I remember was that they would put sardine. He would make me a sardine sandwich when I would go to school. One day. Because what he did was he always made egg salad sandwich. My dad would make my sandwich for lunch for me the night before, and he'd always make me, my brown bag lunch, and and he'd make me like he'd always make these egg salad sandwiches, and like, I love egg salad sandwiches now, but when you're in the 3rd grade, the 4th grade, and you go to school and it's time for lunch, and everyone's got peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and then you open your egg sandwich and it smells like eggs all around, and then you're like the egg guy. It's embarrassing. So I'd always complain about, now it's ridiculous. I mean, I had a delicious egg salad.
Right.
I remember my teacher, Mr. Moseon, would always come. He was a young guy too. He was probably in his 20s. And so he'd always come trade his peanut butter sandwich with me for my delicious egg sandwich that my dad made. And I was so happy to get rid of it. Then I'd go home and complain about my egg sandwich. I think my dad was offended, so he made me a sardine sandwich one day. I remember I got to school and I opened up, there's like fish heads sticking out between the bread. Mr. Moseon did not trade his peanut butter sandwich for that.